The lighting today is just not my friend. The sun cannot decide where it wants to be. I'm kind of over trying to make it work, so we're gonna roll with the punches, and if the lighting ends up kind of wonky throughout this whole video, then, you know, that it happens. Hey everyone, it's Ashley, and today I am bringing you a book review video. Today I'm going to be telling you guys all about All Are Wrong Todays by Elan Mastai. First, before we move on to the synopsis of this book, can we talk about this cover? This is one of my favorite covers so far this year because I am a huge fan of covers that use text as the main element of the cover, and this one just does it so well. And it looks like a time travel. Like, if you actually look really, really closely, there's like little swirly lines, and then there's like Toronto up here and Toronto down here, like kind of upside down, like, you know, like it's a time travel book. It's really good. All Are Wrong Todays follows Tom Barron, our main character, who lives in 2016, but he lives in the 2016 that people thought we'd have in the 60s. So he has like flying cars and food that comes out of containers that tastes exactly how you want it to no matter what you do. It has all of the things that people thought that we would have in the 1960s come 2016. So basically imagine like a more intense future version of like Marty McFly's future is kind of like what he has in 2016. The book then follows what happens to Tom after he has a error in judgment with a time travel machine and ends up in our version of 2016, which apparently isn't the actual version of 2016. Basically, this book is a time travel book kind of flipped on its head. It takes place in a future, but the future is our current world, but it's not the way the future should have been. Without spoiling any plot points for you, that's basically the only kind of overarching plot synopsis I feel comfortable giving you, and even then I feel like half of what I just told you is spoiling because I love this book so much, and I almost just want everyone to go into it just knowing pretty much nothing because they'll just be like floored by everything that happens in this book. It's so good. Needless to say, this was my first 5 out of 5 star read for 2017. I adored this book. I found that the plot not only flowed really nicely and had really awesome kind of like rising points and falling points that kind of happened at a pace that I thought was perfect for the type of book that it was, but it also had characters that I thought were both unique and in depth but also served a purpose. Like, almost all the characters served a purpose. Also, this book is a fictional biography, which is so rare to see. I feel like I'm going to add fictional biographies to one of my favorite genres because they're so rare. I feel like you could possibly say Name of the Wind maybe is a fictional bio, but basically fictional biographies are when the narrator of the story is telling you a story, but the story is his biography or her biography or their biography, but the whole thing is actually a fictional novel. But as you're reading it, you're supposed to be reading it as if the narrator is telling you a biography. And I feel like it was just, the author just did such a good job. I need to like contain myself because I loved this book so much. So first we're going to just quickly go over the fact that this is a time travel book, and pretty much any time travel story, whether it be a TV show or a movie or a book, always has really large plot holes. Like, let's just think about The Time Turner for just a moment, everyone. So many things could go wrong with that and should have gone wrong with that, and there's just so many things to consider. And I feel like a lot of people, when they think of time travel, think that it is cool in concept but is never executed very well because there's just too many what ifs to consider that it doesn't make any sense. Like, Back to the Future is one of my favorite movie trilogies of all time, but like, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that it makes much sense or that Marty wouldn't have just ruined the whole world, in most likely, or himself, probably would have killed himself, but nevertheless, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that the time travel element of that series makes sense because it doesn't. But this book did a really good job of making sure that the time travel element made complete sense, and no part of it really had a like big moment where I was like, that doesn't work. So basically throughout the book, without spoiling anything for you guys, the author will explain everything that happens in a very relatable yet scientific way. So everything makes sense. And honestly, like, this is probably the best time travel book I've ever read, and it might even be the best time travel story I have ever, like, consumed. I feel like that is actually accurate. I'm not saying that I couldn't have wanted more from some of the sub-characters. That's probably my biggest downfall with this book, is that I wanted more from some of the side characters, but the main character was quirky and hilarious and knew when to be serious and knew when to be funny, and he explained scientific things in a way that was really relatable to the reader. I did want a little bit more, again, from some of the side characters, but for the most part, I thought that they served their purpose and were developed well enough to serve their purpose, while also making sure that the main character was still the focal point, because it was a fictional biography. The real focal point was the main character who was telling the story. Moving on to the writing, I really, really liked the writing style that the author took. I'm not sure if it's just because it was a fictional bio, but the author was really, really good at pacing both his paragraphs and his sentences and just the plot in general. Also, again, the writing was just so witty and snarky, and I am a huge fan of witty, snarky writing. Probably why Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. But seriously, witty, snarky, sarcastic, like bantery writing is my favorite, and I find that it's really hard to find. And the whole time I was reading this, I found that, like, it didn't feel like work at all. It felt like I was, like, a part of this story, and it felt like Tom was actually telling me his story. Like, the author did a really good job of making me actually immersed in the story of Tom. And I felt like that was just so well done, and I literally couldn't put this book down. Like, I would be going anywhere and everywhere with this book because I just never wanted to stop reading it. It was immersive. We'll go with immersive as an adjective. Also, it should be noted that Elan Mastai is actually a screenwriter. He is actually the person behind The F Word, or What If, whatever the movie was called in your country, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I loved it, not just because Daniel Radcliffe is in it. I actually really, really loved it. And the whole time I was reading this book, it was pretty apparent that he was a screenwriter, because the whole time I was reading it, I was like, this would make a perfect movie. This has to be a movie. And, like, even now, thinking about it, I can see the scenes, I can see it being a perfect time travel movie. I feel like this is a prime example of why I don't do book review videos, and it's just because I get really carried away and there's no real structure to them. I just, like, talk to you about the book, and for the most part I feel like I'm just rambling and it doesn't make any sense at all, but I'm trying. I'll bet maybe failing, but trying, so. On top of this being a well-plotted time travel book, it also takes place in Canada, for the most part, not all of it, but for the most part takes place in Canada. And as a Canadian, I know that it is so rare to find a book that actually takes place in my country. And I know that I'm not the only person in the world that has this problem. There's lots of countries that are not represented in fiction, like, at all. But as a Canadian, I was really happy to find out that this took place in Toronto for a portion of it, so that made me really, really excited. Elan Mastai is also a Canadian writer, which makes me really, really happy because I've been trying to read more Canadian authors lately, and this is not only a Canadian author, but it's a Canadian author who writes time travel, which is one of my favorite story elements, especially when it's done properly, and it was a fictional biography, which I really, really love, and is hard to find. So, for me, this was like a really big epitome of awesomeness inside one novel. So, I'm not really sure what else to tell you guys about the book without spoiling anything for you guys, and now I'm standing here and I really want to film a spoilery review because I have so much to say to you, but it all revolves around things that you would have had to have read the book to understand. But for the most part, to sum this up, I really, really loved this book. Again, it was a 5 out of 5 for me. The writing flowed really, really well and served its purpose to a T. It was a fictional biography, which is really hard to find, especially well done, and a fantasy fictional biography, like, come on. It was a time travel book that was done exquisitely, just so well done. Just, can everyone who writes a time travel story please just look to this book as an example of how to do it properly, because it was just yes please, just yes please. The main character was developed so well and served such a good purpose, and every plot twist that happened that initially didn't make much sense, the author did a really, really good job of describing that plot point in a way that didn't patronize me as a reader, but also gave me all the information that I needed to make sure that I actually understood what was happening. So for me, this book just really did an excellent job of executing what it meant to do. So I would highly recommend picking it up. And with that, I'm going to end this rambly book review that probably made absolutely no sense to anyone but me, but I tried anyways. If you guys liked this, please give it a thumbs up and comment down below and let me know some time travel stories that you guys really, really love. And other than that, I'll see you guys soon with another video. Happy reading. Bye!